Hello everybody and welcome to another video tutorial. Now for this week's tutorial I am going to be working on the Bwca. I'm assuming that's how you properly pronounce the name. It's also known as a knocker. And these little beans are actually known for essentially either being mischievous or combined with benevolent. So depending on the person's belief system, sometimes they'll see them as a warning system essentially before a cave-in a mine, or the actual cause of those cave-ins. Taking that into consideration, I really wanted to show a very dynamic angle with these little guys in the shot. So I wanted to show a regular miner walking down the mine shaft, but then have these little guys essentially just watching over him. Just making sure that he's okay. So the angle that I chose was extremely dynamic. So essentially it's over the top shot, one point perspective, to really showcase that angle, to make sure that it really shows essentially the scale of the characters, because the characters themselves are really tiny, only a couple inches in height. So in comparison to a human, which the average I believe is about 1.5, 1.6, it's quite a big difference between that. So the angle that I chose really made a big difference in this overall image. It really helped tie in all the elements really well, showcase that they are essentially just watching over the workers as they work to make sure that they're okay. Now something else that I did too in this image is that I actually used a different type of brush. This type of brush has more harsh edges to it, so I wanted to show you guys essentially what it would look like if I were to use or paint with a harsher edged brush. So it's almost exclusively using that one brush. The one exception is when I'm adding additional details later on, but the majority of the painting is all done with a single brush. And I'm just changing the opacity of the brush to get the different painting effects that I want. So for this worker, because I've already toned down that area with essentially a soft round brush, I'm now able to sample in the colors that I already have in there and just keep on sampling those colors, changing the opacity of my brush to get the variation in colors that I'm looking for. And this really does save a lot of time. I don't normally use this technique, mainly because I find that the image overall tends to look a little bit more flat, and I don't like that overall look. But it's still a valid technique. I'm sure a lot of concept artists use it and have a preference towards that. It's not my preference, because I do like to show more rounded edges and more of an atmosphere within my paintings, and I am able to achieve that better with the brushes that I typically use. But still, the same techniques do apply to this painting. The only difference essentially that will occur is that it'll make the overall image look like a different style of image, which can be actually very interesting as well. Generally, if I'm trying to change the overall look and style of my image, I'll generally change the brush, but I'm still using the exact same techniques. So whatever techniques I've used for the soft brush, I just apply to the harder brushes or more texture brushes that I'm using at the time. So I'm just working on a little guy here. I haven't worked out the hands yet, mainly because I have to make sure that the perspective is correct for the hands. And by working on the further elements right now, I'm able to achieve essentially more detail and more accurate information before I start moving on to foreground elements in the piece. Because if I have to paint on top and then go back in and then refine those edges, it's a lot easier to do it at this stage once I have the actual background technically done, because it still has all the information I need and I'm not worrying about, oh, okay, I have to smooth out this texture or this area so that it looks like it fits where it should be. So this overall image actually didn't take too long. I believe it took about 4 hours to complete, which is fairly short. I saved a lot of time by using this brush for sure. I'm just not happy with the volumes of the characters. I find that the characters tend to look a little bit on the flat side using this technique. Just working on the final worker. So I actually debated initially whether or not I was going to include some little pickaxes in their hands. I initially sketched them out with the pickaxes. I actually ended up taking them out after. I didn't feel it was overly necessary for these characters, so I just took them out. Just adding the shadow now. And it's really important that I do add the drop shadows, because it really does help show form and weight to the characters as well, which is why I'm working on that part. Fine-tuning the perspective on the main worker and base, and some of the texture elements in the wood. I'm just refining the perspective essentially on these different beams to make sure that they work correctly. Adding a light source on the workers' hats. In the final image, you'll notice that I added a bit more contrast to the final image. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you guys soon. So thank you and take care.